All right, welcome everyone back to the iGaming experience. I'm your host Sam Bhatti, and not as usual. Normally, I'm recording these from the Zebra Studios in Podgorica, Montenegro, but today it's a special one. I'm here in Barcelona at ICE 2026, which I had mentioned in the previous episode. This is the International Casino Exhibition, the biggest event really in the iGaming space, and you'll also notice something different if you're watching this is I'm not alone, which is a bit more normal of a situation. But we've got my colleague Josip Brajkovic.
Perfect.
Good.
Perfect pronunciation.
I got the last name. Okay,
Perfect.
good,
Yeah.
good. I had to practice, but I'm feeling good about it. And Josip and I, we worked together on a project called BetHero. Josip has been in the industry for a very long time, and I'll ask you in a moment to give a little bit of your background. But the theme for today's podcast is really to discuss what we've seen here at ICE, what's going on, what's the general vibe of the industry, and just kind of our take on what people are interested in, and then also a little bit on what we're doing to try and address some of that. Right. So, Joseph, welcome.
Thank you, Sammy. We've been speaking about doing this for a long time now, and being at ICE, doing it here makes perfect sense.
All right. So, thanks, Joseph. So, as I said, why don't you give everyone a little bit of an idea of like where you're coming from and why we should be interested in what you have to say.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I started my iGaming journey in 2009. So 17 years coming up. So basically, I've seen the industry grow. I've seen the industry tackle with the problems that it is facing every year, every period. I've seen operators grow
Mm,
and some of them fail.
sure.
I've seen what works in the industry, and overall it was like an extremely enjoyable experience, extremely enjoyable journey being and seeing the rise of the iGaming in Europe and across the world.
I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for a little bit more context, I'm the CTO, so I'm basically the tech guy at BetHero. Josip is our head of operations and our resident sportsbook expert. So, Josip, you've got extensive background in sportsbook and risk management. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what you've done there?
I started out at German market, which is a complex one, being doing a lot of stuff in the sports book, and there building the risk management solutions, and also running sports books and their risk management departments.
Mm,
Moved away from there to do something more exciting, because when you stay at a certain well-oiled operation after a couple of years, you get that itch. I want to do something new and interesting.
right.
So after that, I moved on to build B2B and B2C solutions for the iGaming. Launched a couple of them. Then again, after a while, you want to do something different,
Sure.
and that's why I'm now here at BetHero. We are trying to build something interesting that adds on top of the traditional sportsbook experience, and basically offers something new, and at the same time it solves so much problems. So I would say that I cannot stay at one problem for too long. As soon as we solve it, I want to move on and do something new, and to solve some other problems in the industry.
Man, I totally feel you on that
Yeah.
one. There's an expression which isn't word for word, but basically they say that comfort is the enemy of growth.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. And that's the beauty of ICE. You come in here, okay, you have like an agenda and meetings and everything, but a lot of it is also ad hoc. I mean, like this podcast itself.
Yeah.
You are just getting out of the comfort zones. You are speaking, pitching, learning. So it's like a wholesome experience that is basically pushing you to get out of your comfort zone,
Right.
and at the same time you learn so much about the industry, because there is always something new to learn, and you are meeting exquisite people here,
Mm-hmm.
intelligent minds that are doing some crazy good stuff in the space.
Yeah, listen, totally agree. It's interesting that when you come to an event like this, especially one that goes over 3 days, as you were saying, you can go into this with a specific plan, and you think this is going to be the outcome, or these are the people, these are the booths I'm going to visit, these are the companies I'm going to see. But as you get here and you start walking the floor and bumping into different people, or some of your colleagues pinging with different meetings, you have to be ready to pivot. Right?
Exactly, and sometimes having just 8 hours in a day is too little because time flies at ICE.
Big
It,
time.
it just flies because, as I said, so many people, so many companies, so many good keynote speakers, and you are trying just to fit as much as you can in your day.
Right,
It
right.
it can be a challenge sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would even say for us,
Yeah.
being here at the venue is really only half of our day, right? As soon as the venue closes around 5 or people start to shuffle out of here, that's when the networking happens. That's when the dinners start
Exactly.
to happen. So
Exactly.
it's been 16 hours back to back to back so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we are on day 3 now.
Yep,
We still have some battery in tank. Yeah, we're gonna power through the third day.
100%.
But yeah, first 2 days were like as you said, hectic. 8 hours, 10 hours on the floor, and then dinners, meetings, drinks.
Hmm.
A vital part of the iGaming in the industry as well, because that's where the business happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a big reason why a lot of people like to come back to these events is because
Exactly.
it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Like your
Yeah. Full
business
on.
during the day, a little bit of partying at night mixed with still some business. It's a good time.
Exactly, and that's what I like about iGaming. It's like a huge industry that is growing each year,
Hmm.
but also it's an extremely fun industry to work at. It's inventive. Uh, a lot of stuff changing all the time with the regulations, with new agendas, new buzzwords.
Hmm.
But also, people in the industry are extremely fun. They are always down for dinners, for drinks, uh, to get some business done over a drink is like a usual thing in iGaming.
Agree.
Yeah,
You got to grease the wheels a little
yeah,
bit,
exactly.
right? Well, all right. So now we've given you a little bit of the lay of the land. Like as you know, Josip, this podcast is mainly for newbies, beginners,
Hmm.
people that are not that familiar with the iGaming industry, or maybe have just broken into it. And so I think what we decided was to try and break down what we're seeing here at ICE and give people a general idea of where the industry is right now, where it's going. And if you listen to the previous episode, I did go over that. When it comes to these summits, that's kind of one of the main things that you take out of it is just getting an overall idea of what people are talking about,
Hmm.
what technologies, what new products are being pushed, and there's if there's one sort of interesting one, there's usually two or three that are kind of piggybacking on it and doing a
Yeah.
similar thing, and then as you progress throughout the year, you see more people jump in on that. So, maybe you could just give us an idea generally of what you've been seeing here at ICE and any recurring themes or anything that stood out to you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, as you said, semi speaking, ones where you have venture capitalists speaking that are managing huge funds,
Mm,
is a really good time to spend because you hear the problems that they are facing,
mm,
and then it's a perfect combo when you combine it with what you're hearing on the floors from the clients, operators, providers,
mhm.
and there definitely is some overlap there. What I've seen is that crypto casinos and sportsbooks are struggling a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
I think that the major reason for that is the rise of the customer acquisition costs, and customer lifetime value is lowering down.
Mm,
So you have to also understand that the, I would say, commodity that is like sports feed or casino aggregators and platforms that go hand in hand with that are becoming more and more accessible, which also means that the that the entry point in terms of pricing is becoming easier,
Mm,
and with that the market is getting saturated. A lot of similar or same operators competing for the same piece of cake.
right.
And you have to be innovative to stand out there. You have to work on engagement, but in a really innovative way,
Mm,
and you have to capture customers at a decent pricing point. Uh,
mm,
and some of the casinos and sportbook in the crypto space are doing that. And it's gonna be a fun year to see which of them make it, and which of them fail. And from my point of view, I think that the ones that will succeed are the ones that are trying to build something innovative, or
hmm.
partner up with innovative products like BetHero is.
Right, right.
Because the old way of doing business is changing, and it's changing fast. And the clients and the operators need to adapt, or otherwise they're gonna be left in dust.
Absolutely. And I think you made at the start of your statement there, you made a really important point about the lifetime value. First of all, that sports books are struggling a
Hmm.
little bit, and that the lifetime value is lowering a
Yeah.
little bit. So if you remember from a previous episode, I talked about LTV, which is lifetime value. And one of the key reasons that that goes down, and just again for the newbies, the lifetime value basically means when you get a customer onto your platform, the total amount of money that you expect to profit from that player over their entire time with you on the site. And so, one of the main ways that an operator would combat lowering lifetime value is to increase the engagement and increase the different tools that you would have to retain these players.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, and I think one overlooked aspect of all of it is the target audience that the marketeers are going for. There is like a huge untapped market, which are basically people that have zero experience with sports betting,
Mm,
and having them on board on the traditional sportbook is often quite a challenge, because the usual sports fan that has zero experience with betting is gonna have a hard time signing up and seeing some spreadsheets and odds on the
hmm.
UI. You need to make it simple, interesting, and engaging, especially for the younger generations.
Mm.
And I think that lowering that entry point and making like a fun engagement uh, a product that the audience can relate to is the perfect recipe.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100%. And you're probably, I think most people that are listening to this, if you are the target audience of someone who's completely new to the industry or a little bit less familiar with it, give this podcast a pause right now and open up any sports book, and you'll see exactly what Josip is talking about.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons for the existence of Bet Hero, really, is that we identified that, as you said, the largest demographic out there
Hmm.
is people who have never placed a bet in their life,
Exactly.
which is probably a lot of the people listening to this
Yeah.
podcast. And one of the main reasons for that is even if they're interested in it, they get to a platform and the UI, the user interface, which we've talked about before, the UI is not friendly at all.
Exactly.
You need to spend a decent amount of time just to figure out how to place one bet. Um, so how are we combating that with Bet Hero then? Break it down a little bit
Yeah.
for the crew.
I would just say something else before I get to that.
Sure.
We've seen some innovative stuff happening on that frontier,
Mm,
but and I like those tools. I like those products, but I'm
yeah.
like a highly experienced sport betting guy.
Hmm.
And the majority of these player engagement tools are built by experienced bettors for experienced
Right.
bettors. And what Bet Hero is solving, we are putting ourselves at a point of view from a guy that is enjoying a game at a pub
Hmm.
with his friends, and wants to do some betting action as well to spice the evening up,
Sure.
you know. And BetHero is basically like a swipeable betting experience with binary options, so no and yes, and simple mechanics to it that you can basically give to anyone with zero experience in the industry,
Hmm.
and he will just easily complete the flow, and that's the untapped market that we are aiming for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like for myself, one of the draws, like within my career, I've been in technology development for my entire career, like 25 years. And about 15 years ago, things really pivoted from just needing to be functional to needing to be functional and beautiful.
Yeah.
Right, the UI, the UX has to be fantastic. This started with companies like Uber and Airbnb when they first popped on the scene, and people were just using their apps because it
Exactly.
felt good,
Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
and with iGaming, it's very much stagnated. So you go to all these different sites and sports books and casinos, and for the most part, generally see the same thing.
Yeah.
And as you said, there are some attempts to combat that by making the UI a little bit more friendly. But again, not specifically thinking about people that have never bet in their life.
Exactly.
So, in fact, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, hey, what can I bring to the table? What kind of value can I bring to a new iGaming company, considering I know nothing about it? Well, that perspective is actually very valuable.
Hmm.
If someone can come in and say, hey, I'm looking at your product and I don't know what to do with it. If it looked like this or if it functioned like that, maybe I could get into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that we're addressing an important issue here, and something that is really going to help continue to grow iGaming in a healthy way
Mm.
as well, where you're providing some entertainment for people, but in a very manageable, bite-sized sort of opportunity where you can get in with your buddies, you
Yeah.
can have a good time, maybe you can follow an influencer, place some
Yeah.
bets, and just wind up having a good old time like you would, on a regular weekend out with your mates.
Exactly, yeah, and yeah, I have a feeling that the marketing teams are basically competing for the same pool of customers just to attract them from the other client, from the other operator. So it's like a circle that the ones with the biggest marketing budgets will eventually win.
Mm.
So if you are like just starting out with a limited marketing budget, you have to be innovative because you cannot compete with the traditional sports book that basically have an endless budget.
Right,
And
right.
I would just add on top of that, yeah, with BetHero we do solve that simplified sportsbook light experience
Hmm.
while bringing like a fun segment to it. But I think that I'm really big on social betting.
Mm.
And social betting experience means like with the traditional sports book, it's just one way communication. You place a bet, you get the evaluation at the end, and that's it.
Right.
So we need to engage the players to feel like a part of community. So
Hmm.
for them to have a reason to get back at your site again. And I think that Bet Hero solves this in a fantastic way, where even after placing a bet and enjoying the flow,
Hmm.
you can be a part of something we call a lobby,
Right.
where you compete with either your friends, if it is like a local lobby that you open just for your inner circle,
Hmm.
or it can be a global lobby where you are competing in a lobby and eventually at the leaderboard with all of the customers within that environment. And I think that's a really great marketing tool as well. You can do basically endless creative marketing campaigns with that.
Right.
May it be just a deposit bonus or signed shirts or ticket to like an exclusive match. You can play around with that and create extremely good marketing campaigns for the fraction of the money, you know. And the engagement and the social aspect to it, where I, as a player, want to come back on the
Hmm.
site and check the leaderboards, enjoy that experience, and do it again.
Totally. Yeah, and so taking it to what we're seeing here at ICE, I think one of the things that I've noticed is we've got the World Cup coming
Yeah,
up later this year,
big one.
and that's the biggest activation event in the industry.
Yeah.
It only happens once every 4 years, so there's a lot of interest in people or different operators looking to see how they can get more attention to their platform during this period, and that's one of the things that BetHero is addressing, is specific promotions just for the World Cup, so that we can get more players to the operator site and during this massive event. Is there anything else that you're seeing around the World Cup, or the urgency amongst other operators around here? Any interesting products or people that you've spoken with that?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, Sammy, 4 years is a lifetime in iGaming, and
Mm-hmm.
World Cup comes only every 4 years,
Right.
and it's the single best point for onboarding players. It's the single best moment in a sports events calendar to get your new customers in, because huge audience. Everyone will, everyone. There will be like a huge segment of players that want to sign up,
Mm-hmm.
play some bets on their national teams, and just follow and just add a layer of excitement to following in-play event.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, deposit bonus, welcome bonus. They're not gonna cut it
No.
anymore. So you have to be extremely creative at the experience that you are trying to offer. Nobody wants to log in into a site and just follow in-play odds anymore, or you have to add like a segment to it, like creative markets that we are offering,
Mm-hmm.
because we do partner up with a certain number of sports data providers, but we also do have like an excellent in-house team with a massive experience that is creative, that is creating creative markets that are not available on the traditional sports field providers,
Right.
because in the space you have like a dozen of biggest sports data providers, and this means if you have an operation, everyone will have the same offer. Everyone will have the same markets,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to stand out in that big pool by creating some interesting markets.
Right. Right.
And what we've seen that is interesting as well, and we want to expand in that direction. I mean, we already did. BetHero is not just a sports betting product. We can implement experience and team around the globes.
Right.
For example, Oscars is a big one, but even the reality shows, or something like Love Island, Big Brother. So we can basically attach any kind of theme to the Bet Hero experience, and it just comes down to what your customers are interested in, and
Mm-hmm.
we will target that.
Fantastic. So I think, like, if we were to zoom out a little bit, then
Mhm.
when we're talking about a real general theme that we're seeing here at ICE, it seems like there is a significant focus on acquisition
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
as we're saying, the World Cup is coming up, and if you're wondering about the importance of acquisition and retention, well, I just so happen to have done an episode specifically on that. So scroll back in your feed a couple of episodes, and I can break that down a little bit more for you. But one of the things that's worth emphasizing, I think we kind of touched on it, is most first time bettors, or people that have never placed a sports bet in their life, will do their first one based on a major event,
Yeah.
right? Be it the World Cup or the Super Bowl or the Champions League
Yeah.
final. This is what draws people in. And as we said, the World Cup is by far the biggest sporting event in the world. So we all really need to be on top of that. So I would say, for me, that's kind of been the main thing that I've seen around ICE and on the floor, and what people are talking about. One thing that I did want to bring up with you, though, which quite honestly I'm surprised we're not seeing more about, at least on the stands and in the
Hmm.
booths, it's coming up in conversation, is prediction markets.
Exactly.
It's a big buzz in the industry right now, and I don't see a lot being talked about here. So what's your take on that?
Prediction markets, huge topic. and I think it's going to be a topic for this year. Certainly, I agree that there isn't enough talk on that matter.
Mm.
But personally, I would connect that with big companies being like a huge organisms which are extremely hard to pivot,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
that's the beauty. If you are a startup, if you are a small to medium company, you can be flexible and change the directions
Right.
as these agendas pop up. Market predictions, tricky one. In Europe, it is regulated fully. In the US, we see like the likes of Poly Market and Kalshi like
Hmm.
beating records for weekly app downloads. They are growing extremely fast,
Right.
and the traditional industry is kind of decided to fight against them. From my point of view, I think that's the wrong approach.
Mm.
If the users want something, if the customers want prediction markets, they will find a way to place the money on prediction markets.
Right.
And just to explain what a prediction market
Thank
is,
you. That was going to be my
yeah,
next
yeah,
question. Yeah.
it's like a binary option, yes and no question. Will something happen? It can be like in sports betting, will Barcelona beat Real Madrid?
Hmm.
But it can be like anything across politics, weather, stock prices, crypto prices, basically anything. Yeah, and people want to bet on everything, and the prediction market is getting them that environment where you can expand beyond sports betting,
Hmm.
beyond sports events, and my take on that is, yeah, you need to adapt, you need to, if the customer wants prediction market experience, try integrating some of the interesting features from that environment, from the prediction markets, into your own existing product.
Hmm.
I think that's the win-win case scenario, because you still stay regulated on top of your sports betting license,
Right.
but you are offering something that the competition is not offering. In the US, we are now in like a tricky period. From my point of view, I think that next 3 years, prediction markets are gonna be allowed to keep up with their operation with the current presidency there.
Right.
But it's really, we do not know what will happen after next presidential elections.
Mm. Mm.
And if you put your sole focus in like doing prediction markets, you may end up losing a huge chunk of revenue after 3 years. So, what we are doing at BetHero, we are basically transferring the experience of the prediction markets into our own product. So it's a
Hmm.
yes and no binary option. The data displayed can be odds, points, but it can also be percentages. And we
Right.
are seeing that request coming often from crypto casinos. They want to get into prediction market space,
Big
but
time.
they do not know how. And we
Hmm.
are providing them with this answer. So we can integrate Bet Hero to provide you like prediction market experience,
Mm.
because it's, as I said, a binary option. It's easy to use, which prediction markets are all about, and we stretch beyond the sports events as well. So we are covering all three major points that prediction market are solving. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's my take on this. I think that there is money to be earned there, and the operations that do not adjust are leaving a huge chunk of pie on the table.
Big time. And you made a great point about um, the size of certain companies making it difficult for them to maybe pivot or to add new
Yeah.
things to their product or to their to their product line. But that's one of the strengths that we've got as a small startup,
Yeah.
is that we can pivot very quickly. And I think that would translate well to people that are listening to this podcast, because it's not just necessarily complete newbies that know nothing about the industry, but maybe you're listening to this because you're a new company and you're trying to figure out which direction should you really be pushing and niching down into. So I think that's a great call, and it's an interesting distinction that with a dynamic industry that is moving this quickly, if you're one of these larger organizations that's a little bit stuck in the mud,
Yeah.
I mean, you better hope that you've got a super solid product. You might look back in a year or two's time and see how much you've, as you said, how much you've left on the table because you weren't able to get into what was actually happening now.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that uh, the next years are gonna be extremely fun. I personally enjoy watching traditional huge companies struggle and sweat because they want the status quo unchanged. They want things to stay as they are.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest reason why iGaming, being such a huge industry, is seeing so little innovation and change. Because the big companies do not want anything to change, and I think this is creating a great space for startups, for new companies that can fill customer needs. Because customer needs are changing extremely fast. I mentioned I'm 17 years in the iGaming space. It changed so much. Previously we had in Europe betting shops which were like social betting experience.
Right.
But that trend is slowly dying out because the generations are being changed. The younger folks do not want to go into betting shops anymore. They want everything happening online. But then again, you need to address the social betting field to it as well. So for me personally, working in a startup that is agile, that is flexible, I'm enjoying seeing the big companies sweat.
Yep.
And how they are just fighting for everything to stay the same.
Well, I mean, it's a good circle back to actually how we started this conversation, where we basically said that comfort is the enemy of growth, right? And when you're a big established company here, then maybe you're quite comfortable with seeing your regular profits coming in, and are a little bit hesitant to make a move there. So I think that's a great call, Josip, and that brings us full circle. We're coming up on time now, but I do want to get a commitment from you, because we have mentioned before that you're an expert in sports books, specifically risk management. And I think that the term risk management is somewhat ambiguous to a lot of people in the industry. They don't necessarily know what exactly that means and what it entails. So in a future episode, I would like you to come back and really break down for the new people and for me, what exactly risk management is, what it entails, and then maybe within that we can also get back into this prediction market here and maybe get a little bit more detailed and break it down for folks. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure, Sammy. I really enjoyed this experience. As I said, it's all about getting outside of the comfort zones, and this is sort of me getting outside of the comfort zone. And so, but I enjoyed it really much, and I would love to get on another podcast soon. We're not gonna wait for the next ICE. We're gonna do it sooner.
100%.
Maybe even from the sunny place called
Montenegro. Yeah, we'll get you into Zebra Studios.
Yeah, I would enjoy that very much.
100%. All right, fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for checking out this episode of the iGaming Experience. If you want to know more about BetHero and what we're talking about, you can go to bethero.gg. All the information is there. And of course, we'd love to hear from you on that or anything else that we've discussed on the podcast. Josip and I are both very into educating our colleagues and different people in the industry when they have any questions, and also big to learn. Very, very keen to take in what other people know. So feel free to reach out. You know where to find us. And thanks so much for checking it out. And thanks, Josip, for joining me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. All right. Cheers, everyone.
See you guys.